What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to which US cities residents drive the most. I don't know how much this will really differentiate because the US, every city is a car-based city, so it will probably just be the busiest cities, but I guess we're going to see. How many lanes are leaving the city, by the way? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, that's the connection there. There's like a good 9 lanes. Damn. I mean, obviously, I know US highways are huge, but geez. Anyway, we're going to check this reaction out. Hopefully going to enjoy. I am hungover, so I'm just on the rough side today. But I'm persevering, getting the videos done. And yeah, let's check this out.
States are known for their extremely car-dependent nature, which rivals any other nation in the world. There are several different factors that have gone into this and made the country what it is today. But what matters is that cars have been very important to the history of urban planning within the states. With that, it brings up a question. Which city has been affected by the car-centered American culture the most? We know there are certain regions that were developed with a more suburban identity, depending on the time period they expanded the most. A city like Houston, Texas has towering highways all over.
I've never seen an image of Houston, Texas. I did not know it looked like this. This is a crazy picture.
And life without a car is basically impossible. This is true in many cities across America, so I thought it would be really fun to try and figure out which US city drives the most. Before we get into that though, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. We make geography content like this every week, so if you enjoy my videos and want to support me, I'd really appreciate if you could simply subscribe. It's easy for you and helps me out a ton. Thank you. So to find which US city drives the most, I wanted to go by a per capita approach, because obviously this list would just be topped by New York City, which is going to end up having the most drivers because of sheer size. So instead we go by a fairly simple statistic. Total DVMT per capita, or total daily vehicle miles of traffic per capita. Simply the average amount of miles every person in the city drives per day. This is a statistic kept by the Federal Highway Administration and is public. So if you have a problem with the list, you're arguing with the government. There are a couple quick things to note before getting into this list though. Firstly, we aren't considering car ownership within this video. We can save that for a video on the most car-dependent cities in the country. Secondly, this is going by metropolitan area, which does mean the average ends up getting pushed up by people commuting into the city from suburban areas. And I think you'll be surprised to see how high these numbers get. Thirdly, we're including the top 70 metropolitan areas in the country in population, because Barnstable, Massachusetts has a lot of drivers, but I don't think anybody really cares. So without further ado, let's get into it with the top 7 cities, starting with San Antonio, Texas. Texas is probably the most expected state to make its way onto this list, with San Antonio being just one of its major highway-oriented suburban cities. The city is covered with interstates and other freeways, with I-35 and I-10 being the most major, and I-410 being a large beltway around the inner city. In fact, the busiest portion of freeway within the metro is on this highway near the city's airport, which sees over 300,000 drivers per day on average. But that whole northern stretch of the beltway is extremely busy. San Antonio is a very historic city as far as Texas and the South goes. So you'd think that that could possibly affect things, at least within the downtown area. But there is a loop of full limited access freeways that cut around the downtown, and even though they don't see as much traffic as outer routes, they're still built up very well and struggle with congestion, just like me if I went to San Antonio in the springtime. Anyway, the city has a DVMT per capita of 28, which puts them in 7th. Now, San Antonio was the start of our list of large cities you'd expect to see on this list. But we get to stay within the state and the exact same region as we move an hour and a half to the north where we find Austin. Now, Austin is the exact same kind of Texan, freeway-dominated city as San Antonio, but there are a few differences which I'll go over. Firstly, Austin is smaller by a few 100,000. Which doesn't really affect the per capita metric, but it does mean that things will be mildly different. The city is more affected by the geography around it than San Antonio. The western part of the metro is very hilly, and there's a good part of the city that just can't really have a freeway built through it due to the terrain. So that's what stops there from being an entire circular beltway around the city, and what forces more traffic onto their busiest freeway, I-35. Finally, because of the new culture within the city, as well as the major university, there's a good number of people that find other modes of transportation within the downtown. So it's actually mildly surprising it's above San Antonio, with a DVMT per capita of 28.6. Next up, we move to another large, spread out city, this being Orlando, Florida. So Florida is one of the states where you basically need a vehicle to get around, but Orlando is probably where they have this to the highest degree. It's already known for being very spread out with a small downtown, and having...
That's a cool image. Is that a man-made lake or is it real? It looks man-made. It looks too perfect to be natural.
no real culture or life
It's cool though. It's like built within the downtown. This is a cool little area.
within the city. I feel like it just sprawls forever, and with the amount of lakes all around the metro, they're forced to continue expanding outwards, which makes it seem even larger.
With as many lakes as there are here, I assume it's actually a real lake. I don't know why I was so interested by it.
Anyway, because of all of this, you have to drive long distances every day to get around, and there are so many people that do this. I-4 is the busiest highway going through the downtown and the entire city. There's also a beltway of state routes 429 and 417, which stretches over 100 miles around the metro. In the end, there's a DVMT per capita of 29.2, which puts it in the top 5. Moving to number 4, we have a bit more random of an entry on this list, that being Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
What?
This is the smallest city featured today, and honestly I expected to see more of these smaller metros, since they'd have less public transportation and less people staying within the downtown with no cars. But on the other hand, people are just going to drive farther in larger metros, simply because it's so large and takes so long to get around. Either way, Baton Rouge makes it onto this list with 3 interstates, I-10, 12, and 110. It's one of the many cities that was just developed in a way that was meant for cars and didn't worry about density. The metro also stretches all the way to cities like Gonzales or Sorrento. In fact, the included metro area is much larger than any city of the same size range, at 367 square miles. This shows how spread out it is, ending with a DVMT per capita of 30.5. Moving into our top 3, we have Raleigh, North Carolina. Another very...
Okay, I'm surprised. There's a lot of cities that I've just never... I mean, this place I've not heard of. Baton Rouge I had heard of. It's quite a well-known place, but... Raleigh, never heard of you.
large metro on this list. Now, Raleigh is a pretty easy one to explain. It sprang onto the scene relatively recently, growing at insane rates in recent decades. Most of this growth has been suburban, which means the city has become very spread out.
Look at
All
these
of
house
these residents in
sizes.
cities like Apex or Cary are going to own cars and are going to be commuting every day, which runs this number up pretty high. Just to add on to this, the city is within the research triangle, meaning it has a significant tech industry with many different important companies. There are plenty of these companies with major offices all across the metro, and the main research triangle park is northwest of the city, which means people are just commuting all around, and there isn't even one main place they're going. This brings the DVMT per capita all the way up to 31.2. Now finally into our top 2, we move to
Birmingham.
another southern city,
I mean, look at all the major roads going through this one. This is mad.
this time Birmingham, Alabama. So looking at it from satellite, Birmingham has got to be one of the worst looking cities in the country. This is mostly because it's in the same boat as many other cities on this list, where they were built with cars in mind and have that suburban quality to them. But in this case, Birmingham has had some extreme terrain to build around. So it ended up being much more spread out, while still being car dependent, requiring large commutes. If you live in Shoal Creek, you're commuting 18 miles into the downtown, and obviously 18 miles back. Because of these different aspects, I'm really not surprised it's so high up, because it's actually a very unique city geography-wise. All in all, the DVMT per capita is up at 32, which isn't enough for first place. What ends up being our first place...
Nashville, Tennessee. So I think every city was in the south. Wait. So we had 2 in Texas at the start. I think everyone was in the south. Austin. This one was in Florida. Yeah, I think everyone was in the south. That's pretty interesting.
Geography-wise. All in all, the D up being our first place city is Nashville, Tennessee. So Nashville seems to have some different aspects that go into it. But before I explain though, I think it's important to know what the DVMT per capita is, and by how much it beat the other states. So somehow, their number is all the way
What?
up at 41.9.
I
Almost
mean, to
10
be fair, you look at all the major roads going here.
miles more than Birmingham, which is in second place. I've
Well,
looked into this,
interstates,
and I'm
sorry.
struggling to find a real explanation as to why it's that much higher than any other city. Now, Nashville is obviously a very large city, and I do think it pretty much maxes out on the
Look
southern,
at these houses.
car-oriented, spread-out
Flipping
feel that a
hell.
lot of other cities have. It's large, so there's a lot of ground to cover for commuters, but there's not a lot of public transportation or other options to combat this. None of this fully explains why it is as high as it is. So please let me know if there's anything I'm missing, because the way I see it, Nashville really just ends up being extremely car-dominated for being such a large city. That's the end of our list, though. Nashville dominates this list, but it's really interesting that we see such a pattern in what kinds of cities excel in this statistic. This continues if we move down the list, with cities like Jacksonville, Phoenix, and Charlotte in the next 3 spots. And it's also important to say that Nashville has decreased its DVMT per capita
From 52.
by over 10 miles since 2019. So maybe that city, along with the others on this list, are changing and redefining themselves in this department. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the...
Well, there we go. And I was just seeing this Nashvilleian here. Housing is very expensive, so a lot of people live in Murfreesboro and Mount Juliet and driving for work. Fair enough. I worked with a guy who had a 2-hour drive each way somehow. That was cheaper than living closer. Damn. Big old woman in San Antonio. What? But there we go. These are, I guess, the busiest US cities in terms of cars and stuff, which is interesting. Actually, no, it's not the busiest. It's where people drive the most. It's a weird concept because obviously, if it's the busiest, it would be like New York or California. Not California. Oh, I'm hungover, right? I'm hungover. Give me a break. Los Angeles. And probably San Francisco as well. To be fair, probably just throughout California. But no, I don't know why I said California. God damn it. But yeah, surprisingly not to see LA on this list. I always found LA to be a super car dependent metropolitan area city to get around. It's car dependent, but it has a high population density, which distorts the numbers. Oh. Well, there we go. But that's this reaction. Hopefully you enjoyed. And until next time, like, subscribe. Peace.